Hey, what's up, everybody? Good to see you again. Sometimes these terrific articles are sent out, and I know sometimes people don't have time to read them or want to read them, but forget or get distracted. And so sometimes I've read them and put together some cliff notes, if you will, and sent those out. But today I thought I'd do something a little bit different and try a video cliff note edition, uh, VLIF notes, if you will. And this is about the article, What Google Learned from Its Quest to Build the Perfect Team. This is a 2016 article by Charles Duhigg, I believe is how you say his name. And basically, the premise is this, and the idea is this, that employee performance optimization isn't enough these days because so many companies, so many organizations, so many universities, um, we are doing group work and we are working as teams. In fact, they found that 3/4 of an employee's day is spent communicating with others in some way in most organizations. So if a company wants to outstrip its competitors, it needs to influence not only how people work, but also how they work together. And thus, Google went on this quest and tried to find um, how do you develop the perfect team. And so they began their work in 2011 and spent a good 3, 4 years on this project. And what they thought, what many people think a perfect team is created by, is by combining the best people. That's what a lot of the top executives at Google answered in terms of what they thought they needed in order to create a perfect team. But the researchers found something a little bit different. And in fact, what they did is through all their research, they're having really a hard time finding a pattern in terms of what makes a great team, because some teams had really strong leaders, but other teams that were really effective had sort of this leader by committee. And it didn't really matter what the project was. They just were having a hard time finding some strong patterns in what makes a really strong team. But one thing they did discover that was really vital was something called group norms. And group norms are defined as traditions, behavioral standards, and unwritten rules that govern how we function when we gather. And so these group norms are critical for a high functioning team. And so the people at Google, and also this article noted a 2008 study by some folks at Carnegie Mellon University, MIT, and Union College. And they were looking at something called a collective IQ that emerges within a team that is distinct from the smarts of a single member. In other words, the right norms could raise a group's collective intelligence. And so this was really interesting to see how a group collective intelligence grows as long as the group norms and the right group norms are in place. So this study also saw that two behaviors that all good teams generally shared. And this is really important. One is that members spoke in roughly the same proportion. Equality and distribution of conversational turn taking, which is really interesting and something really important to think about in terms of one of the group norms, is that each member gets to speak about the same amount in the long run. Also, the second one was high average social sensibility. So this is where team members were skilled at intuiting how others felt based on their tone of voice, their expressions, and other nonverbal clues. So these two factors, again, this equality and distribution of conversational turn taking and high average social sensitivity, were two behaviors that all good teams generally shared. So then we go back to the folks at Google thinking about what are these group norms that need to be implemented, and then how can you implement them? And so they cited the work of a Harvard Business School professor, Amy Edmondson, and she talked about something called psychological safety, and this being a critical component of a strong team. And psychological safety is a sense of confidence that the team will not embarrass, reject, or punish someone for speaking up. Or another way of saying is a team climate characterized by interpersonal trust and mutual respect in which people are comfortable being themselves. So this is what psychological safety is. And they found that Google's research teams found that psychological safety was the #1 component for success for a team. Now, that's not to say that things like having a clear goal within your team, dependability, accountability, those things were all important, but not as important as psychological safety. So then the Google folks said, well, how do you create this? How do you create a communication and empathy driven team model? And so what they started to realize is that the best teams, and this isn't anything shocking, have members that listen to one another and show sensitivity to the feelings and needs of each other. And in order to really get people to start doing more of that, they had to use data. So they used data to prove that teams that did those things were actually outperforming other teams who did not. So how can we take all this information and apply it? Well, one of the things that is important is that within our teams that we encourage emotional conversations and discussions of norms. What are our group norms when we are in a team? So discussing what those are, agreeing upon them, encouraging emotional conversations that lead to bonding and social sensitivity, and then again, keeping in mind the distribution of how much each team member gets to talk. So hopefully that was helpful to you. I found the article really interesting. And if you get a chance and you can read through it in its entirety, you'll certainly get more out of it than simply listening to this video cliff notes that I've put together. But if you like this and this ends up being helpful to you, perhaps I'll do some more of these. All right, good to talk to you and have a great day.